Good afternoon. Please join Distiller Tom Leonard in the vineyard room upstairs above the winery store in the winery. Tom will share his insight on his distilling process. Please make your way to the vineyard room at this time. Distiller Talk starts at 2 o'clock. We'll see you there.
I guess that's my cue. I guess we can start. That's good. So I'm Tom. I'm the distiller here. I was discussing with one of our tour guides at the distillery what is one of the most common questions he gets on the tour. So that's I built my whole presentation based off one question. And it's a question he asks every group. I never thought of it. To me, it just seems like very basic, but he likes to start his tours by asking people if they know the difference between brandy and whiskey. I'm not going to require you to raise your hand, and there's not going to be a quiz. But it's a great way he likes to start the tour, just to kind of get understanding of what people already know. And a lot of people don't know the difference. Hopefully, some of this is interesting to you guys. But basically, I wanted to go over brandy and the whiskey specifically, and how we make them, how the processes are similar, what we've learned from the brandy making process, and how we apply that for whiskey, and vice versa. It's a real small group in here, super informal, so at any point you guys have a question, a firm question about absinthe. It's not in the presentation, so just raise your hand and let me know. So the basics, to sum it up, most basically, brandy is made from fruit and aged in barrels, typically aged in barrels, and whiskey is made from grains and aged in barrels. So one more step beyond that, brandy is a distilled wine, whereas whiskey is a distilled beer. Not necessarily a wine or a beer that you would take home and drink out of your fridge, but that's kind of the philosophy behind it. So when we're making brandy, we're starting in the winery. Typically, if you're just say brandy, that's going to be a grape brandy. So unless it's qualified as like an apple brandy, it's typically made from a grape wine. Apple brandy is probably the second most popular style as far as sheer volumes made, but you can really make brandy from any fruit. A couple of years ago, I was at a distillery in France, and it was a historic museum on the history of distilling in France, and they made about 27 different brandies from 27 different fruits. So they had like Mirabelle plums as well as regular plums, and apricots and peaches, and pears and cherries. Anything you can, any fruit you can turn into a brandy. Typically, a lot of the more expensive fruits are the fruits with lower sugar, like pears. When we made our pear revie, we only get about 5% alcohol out of that, so it's a very expensive brandy to make because we need about 12 or 13 pounds of pears to fill that little bottle that we were selling. And so, as a result, a lot of those brandies are not aged because you just want that crisp fruit character. With the grape brandies and the apple brandies, they're pretty intense, especially the grape brandies have a lot of intense flavor off the still, and so that's why we choose to age them. That softens that flavor. Flip it over to the whiskey world. So we're distilling from grains. Here in America, we grow a lot of corn. We've always grown a lot of corn. It's native to this half, to the New World, to this half of the world. And so primarily we make bourbon in this country. The elephant in the room is Tennessee whiskey, which is pretty much bourbon, but it's made by 2 distilleries in Tennessee. And those whiskeys have to be at least 51% corn, but the rest can be a mix of any other grain. We primarily use rye or wheat and then malt barley. Go ahead.
Do you know what variety of corn you're using, or do you use several varieties of corn?
That's a great question. The question was, do I know what variety of corn I'm using? So the big distilleries, when you ask them what kind of corn they use to make their whiskey, they say yellow number 2 dent. Yellow number 2 dent is not a variety of corn. It's not a species. It's a quality. So number 2 dent has to be 54 pounds per bushel, has to meet a certain purity thing, but it's any yellow corn that meets that spec. It's also, that's like the most widely available corn. We grow that for animal feed, and we grow it for our ethanol plants to make ethanol that drives our cars. We use it in our neutral alcohol for our vodkas and our liqueurs and our gins as well. For us, we really wanted to take that winemaker's approach to the grains. And so we work very closely with our farmers. The yellow corn we don't have as much control over because that is each year just the way yellow corn is grown. They try different varieties. They use those varieties for a few years and then kind of switch. With the white corn that we use in our bourbon, that'll be coming out in December. If you did the tour, you saw the white corn coming through the mash. It's a Pioneer food grade hybrid. They grow it for corn chips. Tastes delicious. It makes a really great bourbon. Our farmer loves it. He gets a very good yield out of his field. And it's a very dense corn. He gets 62 pounds per bushel versus that standard 54, 56 pounds. And so, as a result, we have a more efficient process and a really nice flavor. Rye, we actually have experimented with the standard conventional rye, Hazlitt rye, Versetto rye, and Danko rye. Danko is actually an heirloom variety of rye. And in the past, we experimented with Trucker's Favorite 50, which was a white corn heirloom variety. Silver King, which was a white corn heirloom variety. Bloody Butcher's corn, which is a very rich red corn. And Hopi Blue, which is a very common use for blue corn chips. And so those were different varieties we've experimented with. And our fundraiser whiskey that is coming out in May is actually made from those varieties.
Those heirlooms.
The heirloom varieties, yep.
So it's all heirloom.
Yep. Yeah.
Excellent.
It's pretty exciting.
Good.
So we're also doing 3 single varieties as well. So you'll be able to taste that Bloody Butcher's corn. It's 85% Bloody Butcher's corn. The rest is wheat and malt barley, aged in a white port barrel. And then we did the same thing with the Hopi Blue. And it's just, for us, like winemakers, on the brandy side, we really care what varieties we're using. And we group our tanks of wine by varietal and try to keep them in lots so we can grade that quality of the wine. And then we can trace that through the brandy making process. And we're taking that approach to grain as well. And that's something that's very unique to us. To touch base on American whiskey again, at least 51% of its constituent grain or primary grain is required. So for bourbon, it has to be 51% corn. Rye whiskey or wheat whiskey would have to be 51% rye or 50% wheat. But you can paint with whatever other grains you want in that remaining 49%. The big thing for American whiskey is new charcoal. So for bourbon and rye whiskey, by law, we have to use a brand new barrel. Scotch whiskey and Irish whiskey and the Canadians, they have looser regulations. They use a lot of used barrels in that regard, but they also have tighter regulations. So for like a Scotch single malt, it would have to be 100% malted barley. So there's a lot of different varieties of whiskey. People ask all the time, what's the difference between bourbon and whiskey or Scotch and bourbon? All those, Scotch and bourbon and Irish whiskey are all whiskeys. Those rules for each of those products are based per region. Any other questions on that? Check my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything. So the basics with brandy, fruit already has sugar in it. You bite into it, it's nice and sweet and juicy. So those sugars are accessible. And we know those sugars are accessible because you buy a bunch of grapes and you leave them on your counter for a couple of weeks, they'll start to break down and you don't want to eat them after they've been sitting there for a while. Unlike grain, it's very dry. It's very starchy. You wouldn't just eat, very few people anyway, will just eat a handful of grain. If you see somebody do that, they probably work in a brewery or distillery. But so as a result, we can store the grains for whiskey production for a year. There's actually, I found out from a maltster at a distilling conference that the malt, one of the major maltsters based out of Canada sells, is a blend of 2016 Copeland and 2017 Pinnacle barley. Because they're very slowly stretching. So they know already 3 years down the road, 2 years down the road, what the harvest looks like. And they're trying to consistently blend that because it's a lot of that malt is going to the big breweries or the very large distilleries, and they want a very consistent product profile over several years. For us, we try to follow the harvests. So when our friend Phil harvests his white corn, we bring that in. He harvests it in October, November. We bring it in December, and we start distilling in January. We follow his schedule. In July, when he harvests the rye, we bring in the fresh batch of rye, and we make rye whiskey for August through December. Try to embrace each vintage, very similar to the big difference, though, is with the brandy, since that fruit is ready to go, we basically just juice it. We press it, squeeze out the juice, and we add our yeast, and the yeast is ready to go. The whiskey requires a little bit more work. We have to cook it, but before we cook it, we have to mill it into like a fine flour, kind of like a cornmeal. And then that cook process will take about 3 to 4 hours. And what we're basically trying to do is liquefy the grain, gelatinize the starches, and add some malt barley, which will break down those starches into simple sugar. From there, now we're ready to add some yeast. That fermentation process, for both of those, we take a very slow, cold fermentation. The guys in Kentucky will ferment their whiskey batches in about 36 to 48 hours, and they'll ferment about 88, 90 degrees. We like to ferment in about 72 to 76 degrees. So trying to take that approach with the winemaking side, that slow fermentation, that cool fermentation is going to create some good flavors, give you a nice healthy fermentation, and you get some really great results that way. Any questions on any of this? So here we are in the winery. So winery to a distillery. It's a natural extension. Winemaking is the first step to make brandy. So you have to make wine before you can make brandy. A lot of people think, oh, it's a great way for you to get rid of your wine that doesn't sell or it turned out bad or whatever reason. That's a very common belief. It's what the guys in California do. That's why you can buy a handle of brandy for $3 cheaper than a bottle of Tito's, even though Tito's is made from corn, which goes for $100 a ton, versus the grapes go for $1,500 to $2,000 a ton in California. Because the guys in California, they'll distill much higher than we do. They'll create a very neutral brandy, and then they age in whatever barrels they have lying around, and actually, by law in America, you can use up to 2.5% flavoring in your brandy. And so a lot of those guys just kind of have a house flavor that they'll add to make those batches consistent, and they'll use whatever grapes are available. Distillation is all about concentration and separation. So if you start with garbage, you get concentrated garbage out. And there's ways to treat for that, but we're big believers in just making wine for each brand. Again, most of the large distilleries will focus on efficiency. They focus on the yield. They're looking at the economics of it. And for us, at the scale we operate, we know we'll never be able to make a $9.99 bottle of bourbon, and we're not going to try. So as a result, we're focusing on spending a little bit extra on all of our ingredients to make every batch the best we can. So our focus is on that quality, the product quality first.
When you say that you make the wine for the brandy,
Correct.
what kind of wine would it be similar to?
So the story I like to tell is a story of the lacrosse and St. Pepin.
Okay.
St. Pepin is what we use in our Eagle White. It's what we use in our ice wine. And we also use that grape for our vermouth and most importantly for Coca-Cola. So what that grape becomes, a lot of that has to do when we pick. So we pick the brandy grapes earlier than we'll pick the Eagle White grapes because it's going to be higher in acidity and lower in sugar. Again, if it's higher in sugar, it's going to be more cost effective for me to make brandy with. The more sugar, the more alcohol concentration in my wine, the less natural gas I need to use to heat my still. And the less fruit I need to buy. If there's more sugar in that fruit, the less fruit I need to buy in order to do it. So a lot of the big California brands, they're going to use very overripe fruit, very low in acidity. For us, we chose to make a wine very high in acidity, low in alcohol, It's not unpleasant, but it's not a wine you'd want to sit down and drink a bottle of over dinner. It's a very acidic, low alcohol wine, about 9% versus 11, 10, 11, 12% that you'd see in a table wine. But that acid is very important because it's going to protect the wine through storage, because we're not going to add any sulfites. Again, distillation is about concentration, so any sulfites in the wine will be concentrated in the aroma of the brandy, and it becomes very hard to even breathe around a distilled wine that's been has added sulfites. The guys in California get around with it by adding a bunch of hydrogen peroxide to oxidize out the sulfites. Exactly, your reaction is perfect. But it's a great way. You can take wine, you can take Chardonnay that they didn't sell for 3 years. You can strip out a bunch of the sulfites and then run it through the still and make a pretty neutral brandy, and then age it and put it in your blend. So, yeah, go ahead.
What variety of grape do you use for the Coquillard brandy?
The Coquillard's mostly St. Pepin and Lacrosse.
Both of them?
Both of them, yep.
How many acres of those grapes do you have here locally?
We have about 7. Bernie, how many do you have? 2. So we get some from Bernie here. He's real close by too. And we work with about 6 or 7 main growers for the brandy grapes here in Wisconsin. Most of it's Lacrosse and St. Pepin. We are also making Wisconsin brandy that hasn't made its way into Coquillard brandy yet from Frontenac and La Crescent as well. And then for the press house brandy, we're using an American native blend, like the types of grapes that are grown here on the property pre-prohibition. And we get those grapes sourced as a juice from upstate New York. And it's mostly a blend of Catawba and Delaware. Let's see what else. I got notes here.
I forgot my second question related to that.
Sorry.
I'll try to remember later.
Oh, the acid. So I mentioned the acid for protecting the wines because of the sulfites. The acid's also important because as the still warms up, those acids will react with the heat, and they'll create a lot of esters and aromas as well. So they're very important for flavor. Yeah. So barrel aging. Traditional European brandies, like the French cognac and stuff, they by law have to age in French oak. So typically the French cognac distilleries will have a brand new barrel that they'll use many, many times. But it's all barrels made for the cognac. American whiskey is very similar. By law, we have to use a new turn barrel, and so that's a barrel made for the bourbon. I touched base on the American brandy, Corbel. Anybody heard of such a small brand? Corbel is owned by, works in partnership with Brown-Forman, who happens to own Jack Daniels. So Jack Daniels, by law, can only use their barrels once. So most of the barrels that Corbel uses are actually ex-Jack Daniel barrels because they need to get rid of them. So we didn't want to play that game. We have wine barrels. Now we have whiskey barrels. We're not using those for the brandy. We're taking that European approach and the American whiskey approach, barrels specifically made for the products. And so we have, like in the case of our Coquillard brandy, our custom Philippe toast that we developed by trying about 5 or 6 different traditional cognac toasts on Wisconsin oak to see which brought out the best characteristics of Wisconsin oak. We picked our 2 favorites, and our Cooper made us a custom toast to match those 2 profiles. On the whiskey, we experimented a lot of different chars. We're also experimenting with toasting before charring, and so we've settled on a toasted barrel that they toast very slowly for about a half an hour, and then they do a medium char 3, on the barrel afterwards. That's going to develop more layer for the spirit to interact, a lot more flavors, and get you more depth of flavor versus just a char.
For the whiskey, you do the bourbon in barrel with a different size than the wine barrel?
Correct. Yeah.
So it
So
looks big downstairs for wine. The wine is like 60 gallons or something.
Yeah.
And the bourbon is like 55.
correct. Yeah. So the question was, do we use different size barrels? A lot of small distilleries, young distilleries, will use very small barrels, 10, 15 gallon barrels. We use the traditional American barrel size that everybody's been using since the 60s, which is a 53 gallon. charter oak barrel, and then for our brandies and our whiskeys. For our brandies and our wines, we use 60-gallon barrels. We do have, if you guys did the distillery tour, you saw the big wall, 5-pie barrels. Those were 70-gallon barrels. That's closer to the French size traditionally used in cognac. So we did originally use those for press house, but we're transitioning to the 60s more just from the consistency standpoint. Operating just 60s for brandy and 50s for whiskey.
Do you use a different grape to distill the cognac?
The Cocard brandy is our cognac. It's our Wisconsin cognac style. That's the Lacrosse and St. Pepin grapes.
Is there a different, I mean...
So cognac is a protected term.
Yes. Cognac is different how from brandy?
So I didn't touch on that, but shame on me. Bourbon is a type of whiskey. Cognac is a type of brandy, similar to how bourbon is a type of whiskey. So bourbon is regulated by American law. It's an American-style whiskey. Cognac is regulated by the French government. And it's a region in France, and they have a very long rule book and all the rules you need to follow. And here in America, the definition for brandy is distilled from grape wine and aged in a barrel for 2 years. That's the entire rule. So you can do, there's a lot of exceptions like that, 2.5% flavor and things like that.
Be careful where you're getting your cognac from, because
Right.
you don't know what you're getting.
Well, the cognac is a very thick rule book, and that's to protect the brand of cognac. That's in France. The American brandy definition is the one I just told you, which is that one line, basically.
That's why you have a variety of flavors.
That's why we can make so many different things. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because every brand of cognac I've ever had they're all very different.
Yeah. So in cognac, there's about 6 or 7 different regions, and so if you buy like a Grand Champagne or a Petite Champagne, that's all different regions, and each region's going to also have its own set of rules. And then you have BS, VSOP, and XO, and those are different rules for ages on all of those as well. The art of cognac, by law, I think it's 90 to 95% Uni Blanc is the variety of grapes that they have. And then they have a list of the other, like 6 or 7 other grapes they can use to make up the rest of that. Here in America, we don't have anything that controlling, so that's why we can play around with things like Lacrosse and St. Pepin in one blend, La Crescent in another blend, and the Catawba Delaware blend in another blend. Any other questions? Yeah.
Why, I know obviously in terms of society, there's a lot of rules and laws, but why can you only use whiskey barrel one time?
Why does America require a new charcoal barrel? So, right now, for the first time since the early 60s, the federal government is looking at updating these rules. And so, they don't change the rules very often. When those rules were written after Prohibition to define what bourbon was, there are very few, there's 5 operating distilleries during Prohibition. 5 people had medicinal whiskey licenses because you could go down to Walgreens and buy, if you got a prescription, you could get 1 pint of whiskey at 100 proof per week. That was the legal prescription amount if you had anxiety, couldn't sleep, sore back, just talk to your doctor.
Needless to say, whenever governments get involved, like they did with cheese, remember that debacle when they changed?
The board thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So after Prohibition, nobody had operating distilleries, so people didn't have the choice of new or used. So people just started building bourbon distilleries, and that's what happened with Jim Beam. Jim Beam just built the bourbon distillery and started making Jim Beam bourbon again. You can't buy used barrels if nobody has used barrels. So everybody started making new charred oak barrels, which was mostly the tradition pre-Prohibition as well. But when they wrote the rules, they're like, well, everybody's using 51% corn or more. Some guys are using 60, some guys are using 80. We'll just say 51%. Everybody's using brand new barrels. So that's how the rules got. And that's protected bourbon as a class. And a lot of people are worried about the rules. Like, well, that's pretty wasteful for wood. Well, the bourbon whiskey industry, which Right now, there's 9 million barrels of bourbon in Kentucky, which is where the lion's share of it is made. The bourbon whiskey industry can't cut trees down fast enough to replace the organic growth of oak in the U.S. That's how much oak we have in this country. We can't cut it down fast enough. We can't fill barrels of whiskey fast enough for that. But then on top of that, as a result, the rest of the globe has embraced ex-bourbon casks as the container of choice for aging. So the Caribbean rum industry, the tequila industry, the Scotch whiskey industry, they all rely on those ex-bourbon casks for their products. And so, yeah, that's kind of the basis of that rule. They are looking to add, so in America, if you make malt whiskey, which most of us would know as Scotch, Scotch is traditionally aged in used barrels and made from 100% malt barley. In the U.S., the definition of malt whiskey is 51% malt or more, so it could be 49% corn, and then aged in a new barrel, which is the opposite of what we're doing in Scotch. And so as part of these TTB proposed rule changes, they're trying to create a category that mimics Scotch here in the U.S., which would be American single malt whiskey, which would allow any type of barrel, but would require 100% malt to bring us into kind of compliance with that. Because every other country, except for Canada, that makes whiskey, makes single malt whiskey the way the Scottish do. And in the U.S., if you make malt whiskey, it's nothing like the Scottish. Go ahead.
So I understand the difference between single malt and blended whiskey. Can you explain what blended is?
That's actually this one. Next slide. So natural transition. Just want to point out one thing real quick. This cool background pattern, that's actually a stage stack. Those are Wisconsin oak that we purchased from a stag mill in Caledonia, Minnesota. And we have those stacks aging in the parking lot. Might not be able to find it very easy today with all the cars, but normally you can find it pretty quick. We season that wood on site for 2 years, and then we send them out to have them turned into barrels. So that's what a raw state is. So blending. Blending is not a naughty word. A lot of people think of blending as you're going to have an inferior product. Think a lot of like American blended whiskey. Blending is a process of taking ingredients and putting them together. And so, in the case of like Scotch, blended Scotch versus single malt Scotch, single malt Scotch has to be made by one distillery, but it is probably still a blend of 50 or 100 barrels. It's all just made at the same distillery. Blended Scotch is the nice comparison, because what they'll do is that will be an independent bottler or somebody who perhaps owns a bunch of distilleries, and they buy different flavored whiskeys from different distilleries and blend them together. They also, in Scotland, with the blended whiskey, they allow the use of a more neutral whiskey to kind of soften the whiskey and stretch it. That makes it more economic, makes it more affordable. And so, as a result, it's like your Johnny Walker's would be a premium version of that, but there are also less premium blended whiskeys. Here in America, again, rules, blended whiskey has to be 20% whiskey. The other 80% can be vodka. And so you're not getting whiskey when you buy a blended whiskey in the U.S. But when you buy bourbon, you're buying a blended whiskey. It's hundreds or thousands of barrels of bourbon blended together to taste by that distiller. And so we often have this negative connotation, what is blending? And so I put a press house up here. Press house is our flagship product here at the distillery. And we make about 60 to 80 barrels a year, depending on the year, of press house. So when I go to blend at any given point in time, I might have 40 to 50 barrels that I can choose from that are all 2 years. Some of them might be closer to 3 years. I have some going on 4 years now. And I can pick from all those different barrels. And some of those barrels are new first fill barrels, and some of those barrels I've refilled. And some of those might be Wisconsin grapes, and some of those might be American native grapes. And we can paint with all those colors to build that blend. And so what we're trying to do is create a consistent profile year over year for you guys. So when you go to make your brand new fashion with it, it tastes how you want. So a couple different, we have two strategies. Basically blend or not to blend. So like Coke Reserve that just came out in November is sold out now. But that was a single barrel of Coke. And so we handpicked that barrel for its unique flavor and its excellent flavor. Next year's barrel will be of similar quality, hopefully as good or better, but will have a different profile. It could have a different profile because we didn't try, we can't blend it for consistency. Just a different approach. A lot of people think like single malt is, well, it's just one barrel. But single malt could be 500 or 1,000. There are single barrel products on the market, which is basically all the contents of that bottle is from one bottle, but like if you pick up a Jack Daniel's single barrel, that bottling line just bottles 200 to 240 bottles at a time, 24 hours a day. It's just barrel after barrel after barrel, instead of blending them all together. We do have, like I did touch base on those 3 single variety bourbons that will be, or corn whiskeys that will be coming out. And our bourbon that we'll be releasing in December will be, it'll be a blend, but it's going to be batched. And so it will be just one vintage. All those barrels were distilled at the same time, all that liquid. So we basically distilled all the barrels with liquid, put it in a tank, and then filled all the barrels, aged all the barrels, we'll put it back in the tank and bottle. So it's one batch, one vintage. And so our bourbon, our first bourbon that will be coming out will be a non-blended product. So we won't pull from different vintages to try to even out. So why do that? Why blend or not blend? It depends on what your goals are. So for Press House, we want that consistent experience. We want you to have an excellent brandy old fashioned every time you open up that bottle. And then, but for us as winery, first, that belief in the vintage, the belief in terroir, the belief in seasonality. With our bourbon and with our Coke Reserve, we want to embrace that variance. You know, that's the variety, it's the spice of life. We want you guys to be able to see the difference.
How long have you been using your bourbon?
Our bourbon will be 4 years old in November, and we plan on releasing it in the second half of November. So the results, we talked a lot about the rules. There's a lot of rules out there, but all the decisions you make as a distiller are going to be what creates the variety of products you see out there. You know, everybody in America has to use at least 51% corn, has to be aged in a brand new barrel. And there's distillation proofs and all sorts of other rules I won't get into, but those are the rules to make your bourbon. But if you go out to the liquor store and you pick up 10 different bourbons, unless you buy them all from all the same bottle, they're probably all going to taste slightly different. And that is because of those decisions each distiller makes. For us, we believe very strongly in embracing the terroir aspect, the local aspect. We're working very hard to source all our ingredients from as many farmers as possible right near us, particularly Joe Keller. If you saw our bottling line demo, Joe works our warehouse and our bottling line, and he also farms 700 acres about a mile that way. And then we have Phil Marks, who's a longtime family friend, and he's got acreage about a mile that way. He grows the white corn and the rye corn. And you know, sourcing those local ingredients, some years are going to be harder for farmers than others. And as a result, we'll have those flavors translate into the product. We focus very heavily on barrel quality as well, because you know there's not a single winemaker out there that's going to spend the money on a barrel to age their wine and not buy a high quality barrel that's aged, the wood is seasoned for 2 years or anything like that. The guys, the big distilleries, it's all about numbers. So if you're paying $100 for a barrel versus $200 a barrel or $400 a barrel, that greatly affects your business when you're filling 500 barrels a day. And so they play the odds. They're going to hope some of them are really awesome, and then the rest of it's going to go into their more economic brands. And so for us, we're investing in those high-quality barrels on every single product. And then your decision. Are you trying to blend for consistency? And even if you are blending, you can create 2 different products from basically the same set of raw materials by just making different decisions on your blends. Or are you going to try to do something that is just unique and pick a very special barrel or a special set of barrels and make a simple batch? Any questions? We
have 2 hours and 15 minutes till the doors are locked, so and I can stay here as long as you like. All right, well, I'll be around. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Upstairs above the winery store in the winery. Thank you.
Good morning.
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 I usually drink water, but that's what I have wine. So welcome to the open house. We have kind of created a different event instead of the self-guided tour that we have had for 30 some years. We have guided tour this year. So you are welcome to take, every 10 minutes there is a guided tour through the winery as well as at the distillery. At 12 o'clock, Paul Shaw will be doing a cooking demo. At 1 o'clock, Bruce will be doing a pruning demo in the basement instead of outside because of the snow and the temperature. And then at 2 o'clock, my son-in-law, Tom, the distiller, will have a talk right here in this room about distilling at the distillery. We are celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Prairie Fumée, and Prairie Fumée was released exactly 30 years ago in March 1989. And so a lot of it, our life around here, this is not our kids, it's Julie and I. And this is our daughter Celine.
But she looks just as good now as she did then. What happened to you?
Well, and I'm still in love, so. So this is Celine, our daughter. She is the next winemaker to be after me. So she has a Master of Wine Science from Cornell University, and she's in training to be the next winemaker. She will be the 14th generation of winemaker, and I am the 13th in our long heritage of French winemaking. So 1988, when Celine was a few months. Well, let's backtrack a little bit. The winery in 1984, 85, 86, business was rough and tough. You know, cash flow, we didn't know what it meant. Not a pot to pee in, that was us. So it was not easy to make a go at the business. And I'm not going to say we contemplated bankruptcy, but we kind of wondered, like, gosh, how can we get going? During harvest of 1988, Julie and I, and Celine was a few months old, went to a restaurant, Pepino Gargano, on University Avenue, across from Brandon. And Pepino, being a good friend, brought a bottle to our table, said, hey, I want you to try this. And it was a Fumé Blanc from California, from Vertebrado. And it just kind of hit me in the face, and thinking that, wow, this is the kind of wine we need. This is the kind of rejuvenation, the new style. That's a wine of the future. Very feminine, very fruity, very light, low alcohol, crisp, fresh and fruity. And it was September of 1988, during fermentation. So So that's when I designed and created the Prairie Name. And in March 1989, this was the first bottle, the first label. In March 1989, we bottled the Prairie Name, we released it to the market, and within a month, it got 4 gold medals. And it was the beginning of a great story. And people from Chicago had read a newspaper clipping of this winery in Wisconsin, Minneapolis Tribune, San Francisco. So there was a little bit of a buzz of this little winery in Wisconsin making this wine and getting 4 gold medals right off the bat. And so that was, and we didn't quite know how big it was going to be, but personally it was selling. People were interested in the other wine. And 1990, Stone Mill Winery at Silver came up for sale. And, you know, friendly competitors, but they were staying on our side because they were as big as us and they were competing with us. So when you don't like your competitor, buy them out. That's what we did. So 1990, Jim Pape, good friend of Bob and Joanne, called Bob and said, hey, how do you put a back into a business? Okay, what's going on? This and that. So conversation took place. 1990, we bought Cedar Creek Winery, not the building, but the business. And so it became Cedar Creek Winery. Different wines, different price point, different flavors. So then we had 2 wines on every shelf in every store. In Madison and Milwaukee, we had the Wollersheim Winery and we had the Cedar Creek wine. And then 1991, a new generation of labels for the Prairie Name, and production was going up all the time. And at the time, right where we are sitting, we had a barn, actually a little bit on that side, underneath this sign there. We had a little barn, and we had plastic tanks, and we had insulated tank outside, and we just, we couldn't keep up making enough wine, and then we had to build this first wing right here. So this is the fermentation room that you will be there if you take the tour. Offices, the hallway, the break room, and what we used to call the case room and the bottling room was down here. So that was the very first addition that we had to do in 1993 because we could not ferment anymore outside in the insulated tanks underneath the overhang. So it was time to grow. 1995, 3 big awards, the biggest that we had ever gotten: Blockbuster Wine of the Year because of the Prairie Name, Winemaker of the Year, and Winery Improvement of the Year because of what we had done. So that was the biggest award we had gotten to date. 1997, we had to expand again. And this was, believe it or not, this was designed to be a warehouse, and now it's all full of tanks. When you take the distillery tour, this is where we have all the big 58, we have 40, 58 and big gallon tanks in that room, all custom built here in Sauk City by Badger Fabrication. So this is what we call the big room, and that was 1997. 2001, we came up with a new generation of label, and actually we just came up with a new label for the entire line, and you will see the new packaging, the new look. 2002, we built a big warehouse in Prairie du Sac. We can put 60,000 cases of wine. That's where all the semi go to get loaded and to unload empty glass. And believe it or not, when we christened the building, Bob and I were holding that bottle of Prairie Name. It took 4 times for me to bang it. I made a dent in the steel folks. I could not, I didn't want to swing it like this and splatter everybody, so I Finally, I broke it on the ground because I couldn't break it against the cement walls. 2003, 2004, one of our biggest awards, and every year they get a bit bigger. That was good loss. I love to get medal in California because that's where all the biggest peers are, the most famous wineries are. So when you are competing against those wineries and you are recognized with such award, it's always a happy feeling. And 2005 was a big change for us. This is when we came up with the screw cap. And believe it or not, we have done an internal survey with our Kiss Club members. 72% of you Kiss Club members did not like the idea of going to screw cap. Thank God I didn't listen to you. And we went ahead with the screw cap because screw cap is the best closure there. It's better than a natural cork. Natural cork has its place in traditional wine, such as the Chardonnay, or Pinot Noir, Cabernet, or Syrah, that are barrel aged for months and years. Natural cork is good. It belongs on those wines. Natural cork does not belong on the wine that first made. Plastic cork should not exist. It's bad news. Any wine in plastic cork will oxidize. I mean, it's good. Plastic cork is actually it's the worst closure there is. And how we know that is we measure the oxygen penetration into the wine. So oxidation, think about a green apple. You bite into a green apple, you leave that green apple on the kitchen counter, and within hours, within minutes, within hours, it turns brown. That is oxidation. A white wine is very sensitive to oxidation. So if you leave the cork open on a bottle of wine, within days it changes. It's kind of fading away. The fruit is gone. It's oxidizing. And oxidizing the end point of oxidation is rot, is decomposition, is vinegar. So it's a natural evolution of any food product, but oxygen is enemy of the wine. So what is the best protection against oxidation is the screw cap. So we measure microgram of oxygen through a closure. Plastic cork is 0.9 microgram of oxygen through the plastic cork. Natural cork is 0.3. Screw cap is 0.03. So that shows you how sealed screw cap is. So there is nothing wrong with a screw cap. So should a fancy Pinot Noir and Cabernet go into a screw cap? No, because the opposite effect, reduction, rancid, like sometimes your butter or nuts don't rancid. A big quality red wine will need some oxygen to continue to grow. But it belongs in those wines because they were barrel aged. It does not belong with the wine that you're creating. So you have to pick and choose. As a winemaker, it's a decision we have to make. And believe it or not, bag-in-box is awesome. I wish we could be in the bag-in-box business. We cannot compete in that price point. Bag-in-box is big bulk boxes. Big bulk winery that can compete in that price range. The quality is really good. What is coming next is canned. Believe it or not, maybe you guys, your generation, won't like to drink wine out of a can, but my grandkids will. That's what you have to do. As a businessman, you have what is the next packaging, who is drinking what. And all the millennials right now are drinking wine out of a can. They're not drinking Miller Lite and Busch Light. They're drinking the fancy craft beer, they're drinking cocktail and bourbon, and they're drinking wine out of a can. So if they're going to drink it, we're going to package it for them. And so Wollersheim Winery became known as the home of the Prairie Fumé. Believe it or not, sometimes people don't even know it is made by Wollersheim Winery, but they all know Prairie Fumé. Sometimes in wine list, you see Prairie Fumé, South City. You don't even see Wollersheim Winery. That's okay. Meadows, Prairie Fumé, and you know, we don't really try to measure against other. I don't really care what other wineries do. And we never took the home the best, the grandest. That's not our style. It has never been our style, never will be our style. It would be interesting to know, but the Prairie Fumé and the Prairie Blush and the Dry Riesling have to be three of the most awarded wine in the Midwest, if not the entire United States. And Prairie Fumé has 22 double gold. So double gold is when all the jury on the panel have awarded a gold, and there could be 2 jury, there could be 25 jury, depending on the size of the competition. So when every judge on the competition has gifted that wine a gold medal, then it becomes a double gold. But let's say if there is 10 out of 11, it remains just a gold medal. But if it's 11 out of 11, then it's a double gold medal. Best of class, best of show, and gold medal. Actually, right now, it's to the point sometimes we get a silver medal. Okay, good. Gold is better. Production of the Prairie Fumé, just to give you some perspective, 1984 we were at 8,000 gallons total. Today we are at 250,000 gallons just on the wine side, without counting the wine made for the distillery. And Prairie Fumé is a third of that. So it's kind of crazy. Prairie Fumé is a wine that's made on site, meaning that it's 2 a.m. I have to come and check it. Is it time to stop the fermentation? So 1987 was the very first wine where I stopped fermentation. So you have natural sweetness. Stop fermentation meaning that you interrupted the fermentation. If you let the fermentation go, I may as well have a little bit of water in my day. If you let the fermentation go to the end of it, the wine will be dry. So when you drink a Chardonnay, a Pinot Noir, Domaine du Sac, Domaine Reserve, those are dry wine. Dry meaning that there is no sweetness left. All the sugar finished into alcohol. So dry wine, by definition, always have more alcohol than a semi-dry wine. Semi-dry wines have less alcohol because some of the sugar did not go towards the end and towards all the alcohol. So 1987, it was my first experiment on a white Riesling where I stopped fermentation, retaining natural sweetness and less alcohol. Prairie Fumé 1988, and we started with a small tank that was like 800 gallons, and today we saw it as 90,000 gallons just of the Prairie Fumé. So how do we do that? We shock the yeast with sulfite and cold temperature. Cold temperature being 22 degrees Fahrenheit. That just knocks them out. And then the yeast will die. They will settle to the bottom of the tank. Then we do what we call a cold stabilization. We continue to chill that wine down, and it goes into those insulated tanks that are right across right here. It settles in those tanks for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, we rack the wine, so we leave the mud and the sediment behind, and we put the wine through a sterile filter. So you have natural sweetness, no sugar added, low alcohol, which very few wines of today alcohol. Low alcohol for us is 9.5, 10% of alcohol is considered low, because most of the other wine, you buy a Cabernet or Pinot Noir, they have 13, 14% of alcohol. So you have 10% of alcohol, natural sweetness, and my vision on the Prairie Fumé was to capture the freshness and the fruitiness of that wine. And so that's it. So if I have to stop fermentation at 2 a.m., I'm not going to go back to bed and say, oh, we do it at 8. It doesn't work that way. Even so there is, we started with 1 tank of Prairie Fumé, now there's 1,000 tanks of Prairie Fumé. So I can say, law of averages, one is a bit sweet, one is a bit dry, doesn't work that way. Bob always used to use the expression, well, if you have a pail of ice water and you have a pail of hot water, you think it feels good? No, it doesn't work. The law of averages doesn't work. So when we make Prairie Fumé, it has to taste like Prairie Fumé. So I come at 2 a.m., check it. I come sometime at 4 a.m., check it. I go back. The hardest is to restart the work day at 11 or midnight. At 3 a.m., you can stay up and keep going. But at 11 o'clock midnight, that's the hardest part of the night, to come to work. So Prairie Fumé fits with anything, from breakfast to lunch. And it's really a wine sometimes we get a little bit carried away, white wine with fish, red wine with meat. Not anymore, go with what you like. Can you have a steak? Absolutely. A Cabernet or Pinot might go better with the protein of the meat in terms of cutting it. But is there anything wrong with Prairie Fumé steak? No, as long as it's Prairie Fumé, I like it. So, and it goes, actually, in every winemakers that we do, I always try to pair Prairie Fumé with something acidic, like a salad, like the beginning of the meal. If there's anything sweet, sour, Prairie Fumé fits because it has high acidity, which can compete against any vinaigrette or Prairie Fumé has been gifted throughout the world. Every wedding in Wisconsin has some Prairie Fumé in the wedding. This was the christening of the new building, this one, where we are, in 2007. And the story behind this building is a lot of you are Kids Club members, and you remember the days of waiting in line to taste, and waiting in line to pay for your taste. And then a good friend of mine said, man, I live down the road, I can't wait an hour for this point, I can't wait an hour to pay for my kids. So that's when Julie and I really realized that, we are inviting you guys, but we don't have the space to take care of it. So more bathroom, more usually space, more cash register, more, so not all packed like sardines on top of each other. So that's when we did, and sometimes we wonder if we get on today. We are happy with the setup we have with this building. This is the new look. This is the new label for the Prairie Fumé. I think you will see a lot of it in the store May, June, July. It will be a slow process of selling out all the old label and moving into the new one. And it was time for us to have a fresher, newer look on the Prairie Fumé. And this is what the other blushing rose with the tree and the pathway underneath the tree. Shot of the vineyard with the sunburst red. So all the wines now will have their new label like this as they come to bottle. 30-year Pre-Fumé, so I think now Vicky and Julie are going to give you a little taste of the Pre-Fumé. We will do a toast to my father-in-law, Bob. He would be 80 years old today. House cleaning comments. I have
Thank
the
you.
distillery tour to give at 12:10. And then, so there's a cooking demo here, but there is distillery tour going on. It happened to be mine at 12:10 because I have to take a lunch rotation to help out there. But there is, make sure you go down to the basement of the distillery where the bottling line is running, where the barrel, the aging cellar is open, where all the spirit barrels are aging. All of us with black shirt are here to help you, to guide you, so make sure, don't hesitate to ask for direction and what's going on next. Sir, you have a question?
2 questions. Is there a difference between sulfate and sulfite?
No. Same. It's sulfur dioxide is SO2, and it takes different form. So sulfide could be SO3. So sulfide could be the stinky part of sulfite. So it could mercaptan, rotten eggs, that is added to LP gas to let you know that there is a gas leak. It has sulfide added, that rotten eggs smell to let you know that, oh, there is a gas leak, it stinks. So in some extreme case of a fermentation going south, going bad, you have mercaptan, you could have some sulfide. But sulfide, sulfur, sulfur dioxide, potassium metabisulfite is all sulfur. Sulfur is a natural element of the ground. There are 0 wine that are sulfite free because there is more sulfur coming out, natural sulfur coming out of the soil, and sulfite free would be less than 10 ppm. Naturally, in the wine, you will have up to 20 ppm of natural sulfite. Do we add sulfite? Yes. Like 99.9% of your winery, and it's been added since 1760s. The Romans used to burn sulfur in around grapes. And there is a very interesting chart, and I wish we would put it up here. If you were to compare the amount of sulfite in wine compared to French fries, salad bar, candy, apricot, dried fruit, the amount of sulfite in wine is like this. The amount of sulfite in dried candy is like this. So it's just like it's not even an issue. It's not a comparison.
The other question, would there be any meat, for instance, venison, buffalo, that you would not serve for a fumé with?
No.
It doesn't matter to go with anything. Octopus, squid, anything.
Raccoon.
Yeah, and I'm a bow hunter right up here. I eat venison all the time. Domaine du Sac is my wine of choice to go with venison. But honestly, again, you go with what you like. There is no, this is where it's funny because I've been reading a lot on the next generation, the younger kids generation, and we as professionals in the wine industry should not destroy our own business. And what's interesting, you see the big fight between Coors Light and Bud Light with corn syrup and so on. Okay, believe it or not, all those big beer brands are losing 10 to 15% of market share every year. And now they are fighting amongst themselves. It's not really helping the beer business at large. So us guys, in the wine business, drinking red wine with your little pinky out. The wine snobbery, there's no real wine snob. I don't want to insult wine snobs, but it's just like, there's so much good wine out there at $12 and $15 a bottle. It doesn't have to cost $500 a bottle to be good. And Prairie for me is exactly the answer to this world of keep it simple. It's just like wine. Never forget that wine is coming from a great wine. It is a farm product. To me, it's no different than milk. It's a farm product. It grows on a great wine. We take the grapes, we make the wine, and we share it with everybody. So it doesn't have to be $500 a bottle to be good. So let's have a toast to Bob and either of them.
To Bob.
Yeah?
How many wax to break that bottle on this building?
I'm the one. I remember too well. So I have a bigger glass than you guys. Yes.
Is there, again, instead of excluding other meats, is there a meat that is best with Prairie for me? Not just meat,
no,
but also seafood.
Seafood, yeah. I would say I was going to say trout, no. I would go more the shellfish, mussel, oysters, crab, lobster, that direction. If you go scallops, yeah. If you go the fatty fish, salmon, and trout, you can drink Pinot Noir with this. Pinot Noir is a perfect wine to go with salmon and trout. So would Prairie for me go? Be better on the shellfish, the shrimp, the lobster than the fatty fish.
Are you moving more towards organics in the future? In the newsletter you talk about reducing.
I'm moving more towards sustainable. And the first step will be in the vineyard. It's interesting, and I love the story. A couple of days ago, there was a story of glyphosate Roundup being found in wine and beer. And I'm thinking, stop beating it. It's funny because why do you think wine and beer are targeted? Because it's alcohol. There's so much pro-prohibitionist movement in this country, lowering alcohol, not drinking, which is all good, but do you want to study cornflakes? Do you want to study meat? Just think about Roundup Ready soybean, Roundup Ready corn. You're talking millions of acres against few acres of vineyard. So let's compare in all fairness, let's compare it to what's fair. So starting last year and this year, we are using less to zero Roundup. We are coming up with a flame throwing device. So is it safe? I don't know yet. Hopefully it doesn't go, but it is to burn the weeds instead of applying Roundup. And that's what I want to stay away more and more to apply chemical on the soil because it goes directly to the aquifer, to the water. Organic, no, not in Wisconsin. Too wet, too much humidity. We can watch the fungus grow. Ask the grape grower. Organic is not in the equation yet. And again, organic, show me that it is. There's just article 40% of what's labeled organic is false. So it's just like, Do I believe in it? No. I mean, do I believe in the concept of organics? Yes. Do I believe every label, every organic label? No.
What kind of fungicides do you have to use?
We use, a lot of it is copper based in co-side. It's a very old concept. And it does cure, it takes care of any problem on your roses. And the biggest issue is downy mildew and powdery mildew. So that's kind of the base of a lot of the vineyard chemical, vineyard fungicide is copper sulfate.
Use any Captain at all?
Yeah, that's the same. It is a sulfur-based captain, and copper comes later in the year.
I use 3 different kinds of fungicides and I rotate them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I see Eagle White's back on the list. I'm thrilled. What did it take to make that? Last year you didn't have any. The year before.
It all, yeah, it's depending, a lot depend on, well, what our leaves are this year, I have no idea. It depends on spring frost, winter kill, like right now. So sometimes I have to give priority to ice wine or to Eagle White or to brandy. So I don't know yet what we will have. Hopefully, and we are gearing up to have more and more. We have growers in the room right here that help us to supply grapes for the brandy and could go to Eagle White as well. So hopefully we have more and more Eagle. Yes.
Do you have other Wisconsin, do you get other grapes anywhere else in Wisconsin besides here?
Oh yeah. So on site we have 30 acres. 20 acres here, 10 acres at the Marks Vineyard. We have 50 acres, usually family, we have 2. There's 50 acres contracted in Wisconsin for brandy and market and other foch for the Prairie Sundance Red. And there is 270 acres in Dunkirk and Buffalo for the Prairie Fumé and the River Gold. And there is 75 acres in Kennewick, Washington for the Pinot Noir, the Pinot Grigio, the Riesling, the Chardonnay, Cedar Creek Cabernet. And one thing that you should keep in mind, and you know it by now because we have been so transparent about that, we don't grow it out, but we make it out. And that's something that I always stress. We don't buy bulk anything. We don't buy bulk one. That is why I cannot compete in the market with the box wine because our production cost is too high. If I wanted to violate our mission statement and buy bulk wine, that would be the easy route, but if we are winemaker, we make it. So we ferment everything on site. We buy grapes, we buy juice, we buy grain, but we don't buy bulk spirit, or we don't buy bulk wine. It's all made on site.
Good.
11:40, I will head towards the distillery to give my tour. Paul will be doing a cooking demo up here using Prairie Fumé and the brandy. They are guided tour throughout the day. There's sandwiches by Wheaton Box Meat next door across the little bridge right there. And there's pruning demo at 1, and Tom is talking up here at 2 o'clock. So there's a lot to see, a lot to do. Make sure you go down the basement of the distillery underneath the store to see the bottling room. Make sure you ask questions. We are here to help you. Thank you.
Good. No, we are impressed with all the information you're sharing with the community. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah.